guys, welcome to another episode of Today with Rhe. I'm your host, Rhema T, and this show is the show that highlights everyday entrepreneurs. If you're new to the journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like button, and share button so that you'll get to learn more about local businesses. This week, I'm here with such a beautiful person right here, Jessy Okeefe with Seaside Honeybees. How are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. It's an amazing day. We're filming and I feel good. Yeah, so as we open up this interview, tell us a little bit about yourself and why it is that you became an entrepreneur.
So I have been working with honeybees for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And it kind of just eventually occurred to me that I could start a business. I had the skills. I had pretty much worn all the hats before in the past, between sales and operations and taking care of the actual bees. So I just wanted to be my own boss and have like full control over my schedule.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want to ask someone again for can I take time off?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And yeah, I have a 1-year-old at home now, and having the flexibility to like shape my day the way I want it to allows me to stay home and take care of her full time, basically. So.
And that's a huge thing, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Because like balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship is, you know, hats off to everyone that does that. Not just moms, dads too, but we're women, so moms. So when did you start Seaside Honeybees?
In 2021.
Okay.
I started the business. Same year I moved down to Wilmington.
Fun. So let me ask you, what state or city are you coming from?
I'm from Maryland originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun. And one of the questions I do want to ask you, being someone that's fairly new to Wilmington, what was the appeal to you? I know that Wilmington is now just blossoming like never before with the influx of people moving here.
Yeah.
So what is it? I'm from Wilmington, so I always like to ask people, what was it about Wilmington that was like, you know what, I'm going to make this my new home?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel bad being part of the, making it crazy. Sorry. But yeah, I had lived up in New England and then grew up in Maryland. I went to school in Charleston. And so I wanted to stay on the East Coast. And I really kind of just looked at a map and went through, I wanted a city by the ocean, or I wanted a smaller town too, because I'm not like a big city person.
Right.
So like the smallness of Wilmington appealed to me, and it's really like the only place that makes sense. Like if you go along the map, like, there's only a few options.
Yeah.
And I had family friends in Wilmington too, so there's that connection.
Cool. I mean, I think that's great, and no need to apologize. You know, Wilmington is a great place to live and grow not only your family but business. So you mentioned you've done beekeeping as a whole for 10 years now, but you actually started kind of on the tail end of, or maybe in the midst of COVID, right?
The business started, yeah.
Walk us through that. How is it, or how was your business going, or thriving, or what were the highs and lows that you kind of went through with beekeeping in the middle of COVID?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So it's funny timing. So I had worked for a company in Boston for 6 years. Until 2018, 19. And then I moved back home to Maryland.
Right.
2019, right before COVID. So I actually wasn't beekeeping when COVID happened.
Okay.
I was working at gyms.
Wow.
I was teaching boxing classes and yoga classes and trying to do that. And then I was out of work. And that's actually how I navigated back to beekeeping, when I had like drifted away from it.
Right.
COVID hit, and COVID is what brought me back to the bees, because everything was shut down, but you could still work in a bee yard.
Yeah.
Like, so I spent that summer outside working for someone in an apiary. And I was able to work because I had that skill from before. And then it wasn't until 2021, soon after that, I decided to start the business, my business.
Yeah. Amazing. You know, what I'll take from COVID is that so many people realized so much about themselves.
Yes.
I don't have to go through this, or I don't have to put up with, you know, the 9 to 5. And like you mentioned, I never want anyone to be able to tell me when I can take PTO, when I can leave, how to start my day. And a lot, you know, our economy kind of blossomed in a new way with all of these new entrepreneurs. And I think it's a beautiful side. You know, COVID as a whole was very ugly, but if we can look at how many people were like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And the success that's come from it is amazing. Now we're in 2023 and it's just like, you're still doing it, and it's been very prosperous. And now you can, like you said, have the balance to raise your daughter, still be an entrepreneur, and kill it. So talk to us, you know, balancing all of that, being a mom, entrepreneur. How is that for you?
Right now it's manageable still. I'm still hoping to grow more. So I'm at a point where we manage around 50 hives. And you don't have to like check them every day. You know what I mean? It's more like in the spring, it's like every 2 weeks-ish, and then it's like once a month. So when we're checking all of the hives, it's like really busy for those maybe 5 days, 4 or 5 days. And then it's pretty open.
Okay.
You know? So it's like really, really busy. And I've tried to space it out a little bit more, so it's not like I never have to work like an 8-hour day. It's always like little bits and things here and there. There's always emails, especially around the checks when that's happening. There's emails, and then there's follow-up reports telling the clients everything they need to know. But besides that, I've got a lot of free time in between that. You know.
Can you walk us through the process? What does it look like to actually tend to bees? You said you now manage about 50 hives. What does that look like?
So it looks different at different times of the year. So in the spring, the hives are growing really quickly. So you want to make sure they have enough space to grow. You want to give them more space than they need. You want to make sure they're not honey bound, which is like so that the queen has space to lay. She doesn't like to walk across honey frames. So their brood's nest is in the center, and they surround their brood's nest with food. But that's a little like the inner workings of the hive. But it's also swarm season. So because they're growing so fast, the hives, when they run out of space, they swarm. So the queen, the original queen, leaves with around half, maybe less, maybe more of the bees, and she leaves behind a replacement queen. So it's a swarm is not like, a lot of people think a swarm is like the whole colony leaves, but they split themselves. So part of the colony stays, and then they turn themselves into two.
What? I never even knew that. When I think of beekeeping, I just see the people in the white suits, or use the sleeping gas that they use, and then you don't really think about
just smoke.
You don't think about much else. So
the sleeping gas, though, it's just smoke.
Just smoke.
Yeah, like the pine needles are the best smoker fuel. Wow. So you're just burning whatever. Pine needles usually for me.
Yeah. I would have never known. I thought it was like
sleeping
a little
gas.
Sleeping. Yeah, honestly.
But to finish that thought, in the spring they're growing, and then it turns into you're harvesting honey, and then it turns into your like making sure they have enough food for winter, and then like decreasing the amount of space they need if they don't need as much for the winter, and then you do it all again.
So I was talking to you off camera about how I have a family member that's like looking to get into bees and everything. I want to take a step back before we talk about that. When people like garden and stuff, how important is it for like flowers and stuff for the pollinators, like bees? Like, what would you recommend for people that want to actively help bees without actually like buying a hive?
Yeah. So plants that flower, having a variety of plants so that they flower year round.
Okay.
Down here in Wilmington, you can do that more. But it provides a continuous food source for them throughout the year. So like if their only food is what blooms in July, then they're out of luck for the rest of the year. So if you have a variety of plants that have different bloom times, that's good for them. Native plants are always good in general for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then not using chemicals whenever possible.
Okay.
Like looking for natural alternatives to pesticides and all of that.
Interesting you mentioned that. Does that affect, when people use, I guess, pesticides, does that affect the taste of the honey or not so much?
I don't know if it affects the taste. I would assume that if they get nectar from a plant that has been sprayed, that they're taking it back into the honey.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the taste.
Okay.
But
yeah, I just figured I would ask because I'm like, oh, maybe that's not something that we should ingest, you know?
Oh, it's definitely not something we should ingest.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question, I know some of the service that you do is tend to other people's hives and go out and check. But if someone was looking to like, okay, I want to get a little starter kit of a hive, could you tell them 3 tips, to kind of get started, or what to look for, what not to do when you are having bees?
3 tips. You have to treat them for mites in one way or another.
Okay.
Mites are the #1 killer of bees. There's these little mites that get on the bees. And they transmit diseases and they can weaken the colonies. Wow. It's really like the main hurdle that beekeepers face is these mites. What? So multiple times per year you have to treat them. If you don't treat them in some way, like there are more natural ways to go about it. Mm-hmm. And there are like formic acid, for example, is one that I use. Mm-hmm. I like to use a variety of them so that the mites don't become accustomed to the treatment, because they can start to develop a tolerance. So you have to rotate. It's like a whole thing, unfortunately, that beekeepers have to think about. That's like the #1. Yeah. I mean, there are a million other little things, but I guess, like I said, they need space to grow in the spring. And then treat them for mites. Okay.
Yeah, that tip was free. If you need more help, you're going to contact Jessy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that, you let a professional handle that until you can get, at that space.
Yeah, because if you don't treat them and they just get all the mites, a lot of times they'll abscond, they'll leave, and they'll spread mites to other bee colonies. Oh, wow. So it's really like the responsible thing to do, even if you're if you don't care if your colony lives or dies, it's better to treat them so it doesn't affect other colonies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's different ways to house bees, as far as like some people do like, I don't know how else better to call it, but like the dresser hive, or there's the new like flow hives. What, in your opinion, would be like the best way?
Well, the only experience I have is with Langstroth hives, which I think is what you mean with the dresser hives. Yeah.
That's so bad. I was just like, it just looks like a dresser. Okay.
Yeah. That's what most beekeepers use because it's easiest. I think it's easiest. I mean, it's the only thing I've experienced with.
Yeah. Okay.
What was the question?
No. Just what would you think? But no, that answers the question. If you've only had experience, have you seen the flow hives?
Yeah. So They have an amazing marketing team,
Yeah.
these people. I have never used one. I've seen them.
Yeah.
I think that regardless of if you can get the thing to work, to get the honey out, you still need to look at the colony itself.
Right.
To check to make sure the queen is there and that she's laying well, and you have to treat them, like I said, for mites. So there's things that you have to do anyway. So it's marketed as an easy, twist of a knob and there you go. But I don't think there's more to it.
Yeah. That they're showing. They don't want to show the hard stuff. They just say, hey, this is easy peasy beekeeping.
Yeah.
It sold me. Not that I bought one, but I was like, this is super easy. I can do it. I didn't buy it.
Yeah, it seems like it would be good.
Yeah. So let's backtrack. Talk to us as a whole for Seaside Honeybees. What type of, services aside from keeping it do you provide?
What do you mean?
What type of services does Seaside Honeybees
so
provide?
We install the hive and then we maintain it. So we bring a full setup and then we bring the colony of bees and then everything is included. If they need a new queen or feed or treatments, that's all included. And the honey harvesting is included too.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's a monthly service. There's a startup fee and then it's a monthly ongoing service fee. You can cancel anytime. And yeah. And if someone is interested in starting a bee colony, how can they find you, Jessy? SeasideHoneybees.com.
Okay.
My website is the best way to reach out. There's a contact form on there that goes straight to my email. And then I'm also on Instagram. The number on the website is just my cell phone.
Yeah.
So you could even text me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any interesting bee stories where it's just like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought that this happened?
The one thing that comes to mind is, when I moved down here, I brought all my stuff in a U-Haul with the bees. I moved down and started the business at the same time. And then literally the next day, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh gosh. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it was a lot. So I was pregnant in the very early stages of the business.
Yeah.
And someone called me to do a removal, like a cutout, because they had bees in the house. And I said, sure, I'll do it. I was maybe 3 or 4 months pregnant, not even showing yet. But I did this removal and I got stung a bunch on my hands. And didn't think anything of it because I have been stung so many times in the past. But then, for whatever reason, the next single sting that I got was a single sting. So that day I was fine after I did the removal. But the next sting I got, I had an allergic reaction when I was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it wasn't anything scary, I could breathe fine.
Yeah.
But my whole body turned red. So it was a systemic reaction that I had never had before. My head started itching first, and then the bottoms of my feet started itching, and I was like, what's going on? And I was actually on my way to vacation. I had to get a COVID test. So just strange coincidence, I was on my way to get the COVID test to a clinic anyways when I started having the reaction.
Yeah.
So when I got to that clinic, I was like, I'm here for a COVID test, but actually I'm having an allergic reaction.
Right.
Can you
help
me? Yeah. It was really weird because it was anxiety inducing, which is I think part of a symptom.
Yeah.
But also scary just thinking about all the things, this is my business, what's happening.
Right.
And the baby too, worried for her. But thankfully it passed. I never had to use an EpiPen or take any drugs. It just kind of passed through my system. And I actually had to stop beekeeping for the rest of the year.
Wow.
But it was a blessing in that it forced me to hire my first employee.
Okay. Okay.
And he is the best. I could not have done any of it without him. So I was resisting that at first. I was like, no, I can do it. I can do it all myself. I don't need anybody. But this forced me to step back from beekeeping because I couldn't risk getting another sting while I was pregnant.
Right.
So I hired Jim, my first employee. That has allowed the business to grow even more.
Right.
And then once I had Marley, I started doing immunotherapy shots.
Just as like a precaution, just to make sure that's good foresight in that. And a common theme that's been in this season is like hearing the entrepreneurs having to pivot or like coming to these, certain points where it's like, okay, I have to make a hard decision. I'm already scared as heck, being an entrepreneur. And she's like, okay, now I have to be responsible for someone's like salary now. Like, so the pivot and you hiring your first person was like, this is the crossroad. I'm not stopping my business, but now we're here. And so far it's worked out, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's been a few times I've felt exactly that, this like pivot is a great word for it.
Right. And it's amazing just how much, like, when you trust yourself, how much reward is, on the end of that. And you saying, like, you hired your, first person, but in that your business has expanded even more.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Follow-up question. So does your daughter Marley like bees? Like, was that like some type of thing where it's just like, we don't want her with the bees? Or like, is she a very like, I know she's one, but like.
Well, yeah. So she's a really chill, easy baby.
Yeah.
Thankfully. And I've taken her with me on routes before.
Okay.
Beekeeping routes. If I need to, a lot of times the car is within sight and I'm just servicing one hive. So I'll just leave her in the car and put some pretty piano music on and with the AC, and she's good. But if I do have to take her out, I put a net around her car seat so that she's protected in there. Yeah. But she doesn't care. Like, she doesn't know. She doesn't care. When she gets older, we'll see. Maybe she likes them, maybe she doesn't. But it's cool to point out bees in books for her. Be like, oh, that's a bee. It says bzzz.
Yeah.
And she seems to know what that is at least.
That's nice. That's
just
nice
like
to
Mama's
know.
bees.
Yeah, she'll have a great personal association. Like, I know the bees. This is just a personal question for myself, and maybe it's a myth buster or whatever. Is it true that if a bee stings you, they die?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting to know. I wonder why. I mean, you may not have the answer, but like, I wonder why that is, because like their cousin, the wasp, is not like that, or a yellow jacket. Yeah. And it just sucks because like if they're just protecting, that they have to pass away.
Yeah. Like, why were they designed that way? Where they die when they sting? I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. No. It was just a personal thought. Like, man, I wish their counterparts like the wasp and stuff.
I know that their stinger sticks in you.
Yeah.
And that's what pulls out their intestines too, kind of. I think like when the stinger comes out, like there's a whole thing that comes out, but like they leave a pheromone, and I don't know if that's part of it. I should probably know, but like if you get stung by one bee, they can smell it, and more bees will come.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
And you said you've been stung like multiple times, like.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I've learned actually through my allergy that beekeepers, like, it's very rare to have a severe reaction to a honeybee sting, like for an average person. Yeah. But for beekeepers who have been stung so many times, it's more likely that they're the ones that'll develop like more of a severe reaction because their bodies had. I mean, I don't know the science behind it. I'm not, I don't know that much about it. But I know from what I've read that it's more likely that a beekeeper is going to have a severe reaction than an average person.
Well, that makes sense because you're in that environment, whereas someone at a park or something is going to be a random, just
Yeah.
one or two maybe.
Yeah.
But so interesting.
Yeah. So everyone who beekeeps, I think, needs to be careful.
Yeah.
And to be aware that it's not something to mess around with.
Right.
It can be dangerous, but if you're careful, you're good.
Right. We're going to close up the interview. I have 2 more questions for you. One of them being, how can the community help Jessy?
Get a hive.
Yeah. Of course.
Or at least, like, I want people to know that this service is available.
Right.
Because it hasn't been available before 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I think it's a new concept for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it is possible to have honeybees if you want them. We do all the work.
Okay.
And then, I think that for the colonies that I already manage, if you can be more natural, like less spraying, in heavily sprayed areas. Like there are a couple hives that I continuously have issues with, and I wonder if it's because they're exposed to some spray.
Right.
And then the more flowers you can plant, the more food the bees have, so that's good.
Yeah. I just started a chaos garden in my backyard, and of just flowers, and I've just been going out there.
Chaos garden.
Yeah, I literally just buy seeds and then I shake them all over the ground.
Cool.
Yeah. Hopefully it works and the birds aren't picking up these seeds. We'll see. And then my last question is, what advice would you give someone that's looking to be an entrepreneur?
These kinds of questions I'm always not good at. What advice would I give? I don't know. I honestly would have to think about it.
What's the first thing that's coming to your brain?
Well, the thing that is in the back of my mind, I don't know why, is for me, I don't know what else I would do. So in a way, it's not an option that this works.
That's great advice. If you want to go after it, nothing else is an option. You got to do it.
I wonder if that's part of why this has been successful, because I didn't go to grad school. This is what I've done. This is what I know. So I don't see any other path for me at this point.
Yeah.
So it's this has to work.
That's great advice. When you want to go after something, everyone tells us not to put all the eggs in one basket.
Right.
But when you just have to believe that if I put all these eggs in the basket and I run, that 3 out of the 5 eggs are gonna make it. So you can't have too many options, because you'll never be as passionate about it when it's oh, I have a secure job, this is just something on the side. It's just you'll never fully commit to it when you force yourself to think, I have no other option. This has to work. That's great advice. So we want to thank Jessy for coming on today with Rhe. If you've liked this episode, make sure you hit the like button and share it so other people know that Jessy's business exists, and help the bees. Hello. They make honey, and honey is great for everything. So I'm Rhema T. Make sure you support a local business. Bye.